guys, Comic Boom here to review Brave and the Bold #4. I'm still overcoming a bout of laryngitis here, and like a fool I can't seem to shut up. But in any event, I'm going to give it a shot to try to review this comic. Liam Sharp's art continues to impress. He's a fantastic artist. However, as a storyteller, I think he's got to improve it somewhat a little bit here. This is a narrative that is so deep in Irish folklore that I think that we readers need to be spoon-fed a little bit more as to what's going on. Having said that, I challenged myself to really get a handle on what's going on here, so I've reread the last 4 issues and I've reread issue 4 here a number of times. So I'm going to try to give my synopsis of what's going on. Most of the bulk of what's going on can be found here in issue 4. We've got 2 worlds here. We got Earth, and we got the other dimensional godlike place called Turnanog, where all these characters of Irish folklore basically ended up becoming part of many centuries ago. And in Turnanog, we've got a civil war brewing between the Fomorians and the Dirdanon. We have King McCool of the Fomorians, King McCool of the Dirdanon, and we have King Aleithia of the Fomorians, who was murdered. Wonder Woman and Batman are there to try to solve this murder. A messenger from Turnanog named Krynanos, he went and he recruited Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman said, "Look, before I come, I got this great detective, Batman. He's going to come help me out." So they're in Turnanog trying to solve the murder of King Aleithia of the Fomorians. Now, what's described here in this issue is the history of what exactly has gone on. I'm going to try to give a brief synopsis as possible with respect to the history of Turnanog, and I'm going to basically read this because I had to make notes because I can't rattle this off the top of my head. This was extremely verbose, this issue 4, to the point where it was almost kind of annoying, but I suppose there's some pleasure there once you get past it all. But I literally had to take notes and I almost got like a Venn diagram here, but I'm going to try to maybe explain this in such a way that maybe makes a little bit of sense, because it's hard to put all the pieces together when you read the comic book itself. Many centuries ago, there was the Battle of Motoria. There was 2 brothers that fought each other. The brothers were Aleithia and Baelor. Now, King Aleithia was basically he's the High King of the Fomorians, and Baelor was the self-proclaimed king of the Sea Fomorians. So Baelor had a castle out in the sea, and his brother Aleithia had he ruled the Fomorians on land, and they went to a battle against each other. Now the citizens of Dudanan, who were governed by King Nueda, they fought with King Aleithia against Baelor, and they defeated Baelor, but not before Baelor cut off the arm of King Nueda. Now King Nueda, he can't be king because in order to be king in Irish lore, you have to be whole. So if you're missing any body parts, apparently, you can't be king. So King Nueda could no longer be king of the Dirdanan. And so King Aleithia then, who felt really bad about what happened to Nueda, he said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, let's unite our people. Let's unite the Fomorians and the citizens of Dirdanan. And so King Aleithia he married a woman by the name of Lady Ethne. And Lady Ethne was sort of a high-ranking female of the Dirdanan clan. And by marrying her, King Aleithia of the Fomorians united his people with the Dirdanan. Meanwhile, Baelor remained in exile. As a further consequence of this, the right of succession for the Dirdanan people was such that Lady Ethne had a son by the name of Brias, who was called Brias the Beautiful. So Lady Ethne's son, Brias, became king because it couldn't be, King Nueda could not be king because he had lost his arm and he was not whole. So King Brias then ascended to the throne, and he sort of ruled over essentially the Dirdanan people. Unfortunately, he was a cruel king. Brias was a very cruel king. So despite being really good looking, apparently, he was kind of a jerk, and he imposed high tariffs, high taxes, and the people didn't like him at all. And he had a very bad PR, so much so that it was fostering rebellion. The Dirdanan people were going to rebel against King Brias. Well, King Brias went looking for advice, and he went to King Aleithia. Aleithia said to King Brias, "Look, you're doing a terrible job, but I tell you what, why don't you go to my brother Baelor for advice?" Now, why would Aleithia send King Brias, to his banished brother Baelor for advice? It was simple, because Eletha was hoping that his brother Baelor, who was banished, that he would take it as a sign of trust, and that Baelor would give his tutelage to the young corrupt King Breus, and it would be a way of ultimately uniting the family, and that the brothers could be reunited, that Eletha and his brother Baelor could eventually make amends and get back together again as brothers, and basically unite all the Fomorians, both the land and the sea Fomorians and the Dunedain people, and there'd be one great big happy ending. But that never happened. Instead, what happened is that King Breus traveled out to sea to get tutored by Baelor, only to have something happen back home, and that is King Eletha and Queen Ethne, they constructed a silver arm for former King Nueda, and thereby rendering him whole again. And so Nueda became whole, and he became king again. Well, obviously, this upset King Breus, who was still being tutored by Baelor, and so Baelor and King Breus came and they attacked, and there was another war. And in that war, they were defeated. So Baelor was defeated again. Baelor and King Breus were defeated, but not before Baelor had basically chopped off the head of King Nueda. So it was a horrible ending, but King Eletha's forces did win, but at a great cost, and that cost was the death of King Nueda. And as a result of that, King Eletha went into sort of a fit of depression, because that was around the same time, apparently, that there was this spell of forgetfulness that was cast all over Turnanog. You remember in previous issues, it was stated that the people in Turnanog, all the citizens of Turnanog, they were originally from our world, but when they traveled to Turnanog, they're trapped there. There's a wall that's surrounding Turnanog, and they can't escape. And Batman made the comment that he wasn't sure that anybody really dies in Turnanog, because all these wars, and yet everyone still seems to be living. Everyone still seems almost to be immortal. The only way that one really seems to die in Turnanog is if you forget them. And if you forget them, well, it's that spell of forgetfulness that was cast in Turnanog that really upset King Eletha, because he knew that now that Nueda was dead, that eventually, since Nueda was dead, eventually he would be forgotten, and he didn't want to forget. He thought that's horrible that you would forget someone that you love. And so as a result, he had paintings of Nueda done up, and they used the arts, so they sculpted statues and paintings to try to remember all the things that have happened in Turnanog history between the Fomorians and the Dunedain. And King Eletha also began talking about escaping to freedom, escaping to a place where you don't forget those you love. Because this idea of being immortal and trapped in a world where you eventually lose your memory, King Eletha basically longed to be free, longed to be in a world where perhaps you could be mortal, but at least have your memory and remember things. You know, to be mortal and to remember and to be remembered is better than being immortal, but to eventually forget. And so that's really the story that was told in issue 4. Where this is going, we're not really sure. All we know is all of a sudden with King Eletha dead, why would somebody want King Eletha dead? And more specifically, King Eletha it had been revealed earlier that King Eletha was looking for a way to escape. He was looking for freedom. He was looking for a way to escape Turnanog, to get out of Turnanog, to get to a place where they can remember, because the spell of forgetfulness is causing them all to forget, and he doesn't want to forget. So basically, he wants to come back into our realm. So, because if you remember last issue, there's a wall that surrounds Turnanog, and nobody can escape. Turnanog is a cased-in place, and it was revealed that the Fomorians and the Dunedain they all basically have descended. They're descendants of the same people, and they're all, even though they look very different, they're really all the same. Genetically, they're all the same. They've evolved down through the centuries, many centuries, from the same group of people. And but they're trapped within these walls and they can't escape. King Aleithia wants to escape. Now, what's interesting about this is that we have in the Irish Quarter, in the modern day Irish Quarter of Gotham City, we've got a man by the name of Patrick O'Shaw who wants to actually come to Turnanog. So what's interesting is that while we have King Aleithia, who we think is dead because he was murdered, but there was people with King Aleithia who want to create freedom and escape Turnanog. Meanwhile, we got a guy named Patrick O'Shaw who actually wants to find Turnanog. So those two forces at some point, I'm sure, must come together. So I'm thinking that at some point, maybe Patrick O'Shaw is has some sort of power, because he had some, remember him and his friends, Patrick O'Shaw, over the decades of his life on Earth, him and his friends, he's the last survivor of his friends who over the last few decades managed to acquire various Fomorian and Dirdanan artifacts that are apparently in our realm. And he's using that to try to gain entrance into Turnanog. Meanwhile, we have King Aleithia, who is trying to escape Turnanog. And those two, they seem to have a lot in common in terms of their desire to escape. Now, how this all comes into play, I don't know. Is King Aleithia really dead? I don't know. Maybe did he fake his own death? I don't know. At the end of issue 3, we saw an image of a king on an island. That would be King Baelor, because King Baelor was he's the king of the self-proclaimed king of the sea Fomorians. So that was clearly Baelor. Although it didn't show him with a glowing eye at the end of the 3rd issue, I suspect he's got that glowing eye. What's going on here, I don't know, but I think clearly here there are forces at work that want to escape Turnanog, and whether or not they're going to is going to depend probably on who killed King Aleithia, if in fact that happened or it's all misdirection, and what Patrick O'Shaw is doing, this character who's in the Gotham City, Irish Quarter of Gotham City. There's forces at play here that really make this very interesting. I just want to say one other thing. There was a poem that was said in this issue that, and it was done by Patrick O'Shaw. He was the main character, and he quotes from a poem. And that poem, I googled it. A poem written by William Butler Yeats in 1889 called "The Wanderings of Oisin," and that's Oisin. I'm told it's pronounced Oisin. The poem, "The Wanderings of Oisin," essentially has to do with a fairy princess named Nymph, Nimh, and she's in love with Oisin. And Oisin, he becomes immortal. She begs him to stay with him on the Immortal Islands, and he does so. But eventually, over time and through many adventures, I'm oversimplifying this, he longs to go back to his Irish home. And after many centuries, he finally visits and goes back to visit his friends, the Finians, back to his Irish home. But he discovers that they're all dead, and all he remembers is, while he's visiting there, he remembers the warning that his lover gave him, and she told him, "Look, whatever you do, don't touch the ground." And fortunately for Oisin, in his wanderings, when he finally comes back to Ireland, present-day Ireland, he accidentally touches the ground because he helps some people. He stays on his horse, but he helps some people move a bag of sand, and his saddlebags, I guess, rip up or tear, and he falls off his horse. And as soon as his feet touch the ground, he instantly ages 300 years. And that's sort of the tragic story of Oisin, in that he didn't heed the warning that was given to him. Now, what the hell does that story have to do with this? Well, I'm thinking that King Aleithia maybe has spent centuries being immortal on Turnanog, because nobody in Turnanog ever really dies. Remember what Batman said last issue about everyone's in battle all the time, but no one ever seems to die. No wonder there can always be civil war. No wonder Baelor can attack again and again and again. If no one ever dies, then really that's the point of war. You can go again and again and again. Also, think what Batman said. He never really saw anybody really die. And if nobody ever really dies, can we say for certain that King Aleithia is even dead? Can we say for certain that Nueda really lost an arm? It's hard to say. If you're in a place where everyone's immortal, then what does death mean? And what does it really mean to be forgotten? I guess in Turnanog, the only true sense of death you have in Turnanog is the fact that there's this spell of forgetfulness. Because everyone lives forever, the only kind of death there is the loss of memory. And that's what King Aletha wanted to escape from, to escape the walls from, to get to a place where they can remember and not forget. Because he would rather be mortal and remember than to be immortal and forget. I guess you could put it that way. And that's what I find kind of interesting here. Anyways, guys, I'm not really sure how all this ties together. There's so many moving parts. Now I've already talked here for quite a few minutes already. Bottom line, Liam Sharp has got a very interesting narrative. However, it is a little bit convoluted. But if you can get through this issue 4 and take the time to read it, I'm going to venture a guess and tell you it's going to take you 20 minutes to read this. But please take the time to read it. There's a good story there, I think. There's a lot there. You can Google the Wanderings of Oisin, that's Oisin, and read it yourself. Maybe get your own perspective. Any of you guys out there who are more familiar with Irish folklore than I am, I know nothing. I'm literally learning this from scratch as I'm reading this, so I could be completely wrong. I'm just trying to piece stuff together here, but it's very interesting. And with Batman at the end there, using his detective work here, there's a castle that Wonder Woman alluded to. She felt it reminded her of Gotham City. And then there was the tomb of King Nueda that they visited at the end, that Wonder Woman likened it to Batman's Batcave. There's some good references there. But at the end of the day, I get a sense that you didn't need Wonder Woman or Batman in this tale. Almost any superhero, I think, could be there. Batman's detective work, while it was kind of cool that he could speak Gaelic and he had good observational skills. He could read the writing on Queen Ethne's ring. He read the writing on that, and he inferred from that that was the secret saying that could open up the tomb of King Nueda. And he was right about that. So Batman did utilize his detective skills, so that was decent. Wonder Woman hasn't really done a lot herself to contribute to the story. Both her and Batman it's like the wanderings of Oisin. They're kind of wandering around Turnadog. That's all they've been doing, really, is wandering around this story. Perhaps the analogy is right there. In any event, there's a lot going on here. I think inherent in what I'm saying is also perhaps some criticism of William Sharp, that he should be able to have simplified this story immensely. But in any event, guys, it's challenging. Overall, I would probably have to give this issue probably a 6.5 out of 10, because it's extremely challenging and it's not clear enough, but it's ultimately rewarding in the context of the larger narrative. And it's probably the most essential issue, I would say, out of all the 6 issues, to say the very least. That's my review of Brave and the Bold, number 4. Check it out. Until next time, Comic Boom out.